Well, hello again, and welcome back to one more devlog. This is number 21 for this week. So, kind of an interesting week, not a standard week. I began working on the project as usual this week. My goal was to implement the level loading structure prototype that I had been envisioning since last week. And for the most part, I was successful in creating this prototype. Yet a lot of things happen over the course of the week, which I'll go into more discussion with. So pretty much Monday through Thursday, it was a large task actually implementing the actual functionality and behavior to actually load one level after the other and unload the levels behind it. A lot of coding, a lot of testing, a lot of stitching together functionality, lots of issues. Just working through issues to make it actually a system that actually works and processes into a reality. So essentially, when you move through the level, it'll load the initial level, and I had to do a fix where the first scene will actually load the meshes in the collider so you don't fall right through the floor before the player. It's a rough implementation, but the scene will load from the camera and he won't fall through the scene. Uh, Basically, let's see if I can get to the camera here. Okay, so culling isn't working. Let's try to reload this. Implement culling. So everything, it took a while to do, but everything is supposedly working how it should, but that doesn't mean that the actual prototype as a whole is necessarily valid, and you'll see what I mean upon demonstration. So this decides to work here. Okay. Needs a little bit of manual, a lot of testing of other things, so I have to kind of manually demonstrate it. But anyways, as you move through the scene, the culling camera still works, and it loads up different sectors based on where you're looking at. And at some point, it crosses over a trigger, and at that point, there's a global event call to actually load into existence a a new level. See how this popped in here? Another section, another level section popped in. And when that happens, it actually takes the the empty sector portal and it stitches together the last portal to the very first room so that the actual sector code can continue to function as normal when you proceed through the next room is loaded. So all this is going to plan as envisioned. It took a lot of work to get this done. You know, each each scene is comprised of sectors, and each level is comprised of scenes. And when you cross over, it loads from scene to scene, and going too far away from the sector, it'll unload through calling on its way behind it. And at some point, when you cross over another trigger line, you can see it has a two scene buffer where if you go, there it goes. So the actual level scene behind it Not this one, but the one behind it is actually gone now. The scene is gone now, and the next scene loads ahead of it. So this gets the streaming, and this is what I wanted. Like this is the prototype I envisioned, you know, and this is just going forward, right? You're just going forward, but also probably when you go backwards as well. Let's just say, oh, I need to go backwards. Go to the previous level. So what's, it has to work the other way as well. When you cross over a trigger point, it'll know to load the previous scene and unload the one behind it. So it works that doing it backwards and forwards and dynamically stitching one portal to the other, unloading the scenes from memory. That's the full deal. And happy to like implement this prototype. This took from like Monday to Thursday, like a lot of work, testing and creating the system to handle all of this, like the sector package working with the scene manager loading. All that being said, so the actual scene loading triggers work off global events. That's great. So that's all great, but that kind of brings me to the main issues of what I was facing at the start of Thursday. So if you look at the game and you look at the profiler here, my understanding of loading scenes as a new person is the load scene async. It's asynchronous, right? It's loading in the background. There shouldn't be any sort of, it should have a steady and consistent frame rate. That's my assumption. But implementing this prototype, and I sort of saw it in the demos, working with the demos for Sector and Advanced Scene Manager. Whenever a new scene, you can see these scenes here. Whenever a new scene is loaded or unloaded from memory, you see these in the profile. You see these big spikes, these big FPS spikes. What's going on here? Well, when you're going in the game, you can see this jittering, this jumping, this choppiness, right? And it's not just for one scene. When Sector loads and unloads a sector block scene, the same thing happens. So you're getting this constant choppiness throughout the game, and I was trying to figure out what was going on. I was like, that's no good. You can't have this, Yeah, maybe if you load a whole scene in at once with like a bunch of sectors, it'll chop once, but to chop every time it unloads a sector, I mean, simply put, that's no good. That's not gonna work, You can't, You see, when you load a new scene, look at that big block right there. So why does it do that? So doing a lot of research, I eventually came up to like a big fat brick wall of the limitations of the Unity system. And basically this is known. This is how the engine behaves. Like, whether it's because of my new understanding, like this prototype, it's like, am I trying to reinvent the wheel here? Is this not how 99% of games actually use Unity? Do they just, do the simple method and just like when you cross a barrier, it shows a little loading screen and then presents the next screen? Right. So it's like when it comes to what I want to do, like, a smooth frame rate, loading structure like this, a low memory, it just doesn't seem that Unity provides a simple, clear functionality for you to do that. So you'd think that Sector or Advanced Scene Manager, by using the standard load asynchronous, you wouldn't have these sort of issues. Now, why are these issues happening? Well, a lot of research, what's happening is it's that when it's loading in a scene, yeah, it loads all the data asynchronously in the background on the main thread, but what happens when it brings the scene to the main thread, it dumps all these game objects and all their scripts in the awake method in one frame. I mean, you think that Unity would say, hey, we got a bunch going on here. We're not going to just dump everything back on the main thread and freeze one frame, and you get these hiccups, right? Like, why would you do that? It doesn't seem like they implemented anything for like, easy scene loading like that, right? It's like, okay, it's just not functional in this engine. Like, being a new person wanting to do this, it's like I realize the limitations of the system. So it's like, okay, um, so that's pretty much unacceptable. They have things like, researching is like, oh, you got to go in there and you gotta manage your awake methods and make sure, or you gotta build your own scheduler to chop up the work, or, this and that, this and that. It's like, why does Unity, when you load a new scene in, why does it dump everything back on the main thread? Why doesn't it split out and smooth out the frame rate between the load? Why doesn't it do that? So, my approach in this prototype, thinking how I can make it work with the ideal solution, it's really coming up against the brick wall of Unity system, what it does. So I was sitting here for the next 2 days trying to like figure out, okay, how do I, this prototype is great, but how do I fix this frame rate jumping, this would be, I could build a game on this if it wasn't for the darn, choppiness. How do I fix that? So doing a lot of research, it's just not with the standard system. It's just not an easy thing. Like some of these big shops, they have big development teams. They come up with these really slick custom systems to really, implement their own scheduler and really optimize so they don't have any jumps. There's no out-of-the-box solution to say, oh, just do this to prevent this from happening. It just doesn't exist. The support's not there. It's like, so it really tells me that the asynchronous scene loading is not meant to be used in this way. Like, it's just not capable. Maybe in a 2D game, there's no jumps, but this is a very basic example, and it shouldn't be, the frame rate should be smooth. It shouldn't have this choppiness. It's almost like load async is only meant to be used, like, for big blocks of the game, and you should expect a frame jump during that time. It's not for a system like Sector, where it's constantly loading scenes in and out. It's just not capable of handling that. So I was casting wide how to fix this, and I started to go down a rabbit hole of using newer systems like DOTS and ECS to load, and I was doing a lot of testing, but I could, learning DOTS and ECS, it's a whole new system. Like integrating that, like I found that some of its functionality could be used like to good effect later on down the line, but just getting it to work with scene loading in this prototype example, it was proving a tough hill to climb. Same thing with other technologies like addressables. It seemed promising and it seemed useful functionality for other things, but as of now, I could not employ addressables in order to fix this frame rate jumping issue in this prototype. If only I could, yeah. So I think my plan for next week is that actually, I wasn't able to really nail this down this week, but the plan for next week is to come up with something in order to make this level loading system valid. Otherwise, I have to go back to the drawing board. So I'm really just kind of doing a lot of testing in order to push this prototype right to the end to make it a functional system for the game to be built upon. So that being said, it was kind of an odd week because I had an interview this week for my regular profession of iOS development, and whenever I have an interview, I can never sit around and focus on game development. There's always, my mind is somewhere else. I can't sit here and. So Thursday was kind of shot, but another problem I think, I want to keep doing this game development, but another problem I'm running into, I've spent a year learning how to do, or over a year, learning how to do game development, and and over 6 months actually sitting down and working on this project. But at this time, it's becoming apparent to me that it is becoming financially unaffordable to continue the way I've been doing. Does this mean I'm going to stop working on this project? I think not, but I think going forward that since it's not financially sustainable. Basically, I need to get a job and I need to make money to keep the lights on. I've taken it about as far as I can go that I can afford to. But for the time, since it's a big, you're not making any money up front, like I just can't afford to continue doing a focused 40 hours a week on this project. I have to make finding a job my number one priority essentially, and then whatever I can do on this project, will be what I can do because the reality that I'm facing now is I'm unable to focus on this project for 40 hours a week, basically because my thoughts keep getting interrupted. It's kind of like if you have, chores to do, you can't really sit down and focus on doing this project. The priority is being overridden for this project, even though if I could, I'd like to continue doing what I would have been doing with this and continue working on the project for sure. But the reality of financial instability is interrupting my focus on this project. So that's kind of what's going on. It doesn't mean that I'm going to shut this project down. It just means that I might be a little distracted and not being a solid 40 hours a week on this project going forward from here. I have to make getting an actual job a priority. And if I do actually get a job, then I won't have the time to work on this project anymore. And then I'll have to, put this project aside. So it's almost like a bit of a transitionary period that's happening now that I just wanted to kind of discuss. This project is, it's been worthwhile and it's been keeping me going and something to focus and work on while I've been unemployed and stuff. But it's really getting, financial hardships around here. I'm actually running at a time to where I really need to get back to work. I give myself 3 to 6 months before things really start to get financially desperate. So I kind of have to shift my main focus to that. And if I do have spare, focus cycles to work on this project, I will continue to put work in. But that's kind of the state of the project right now. Just wanted to put that in there as far as everything else goes with the project. But I'm glad I made a video this week, even though it's kind of an oddball week. I did get some work done, but there's still a lot more challenges to get this level loading system working properly so that I can actually attempt to build a game on top of it. We'll continue always the way we have been doing, but things might shift and change a little bit as far as the direction of the project over the next, 3 to 6 months. That being said, that's pretty much all I have to say for now, and thanks for joining. We'll catch you next time, if there is a next time. Goodbye.